This is the Storypunks podcast, the show where we talk about all the punks. So steampunk, dieselpunk, cyberpunk, and all the other punks. I'm your host, Cindy Grigg. This is episode 22, and I'm here with Holly Gonzalez, who writes Decopunk and Dieselpunk. And as you may know, there are not as many people writing in those punks as some of the other genres. And so it's just a delight to have her here and to have her also take us through her Atompunk as well as steampunk and many other things. So Holly's doing some really cool stuff over on Wattpad, and many of you know about that platform, that it's a way that you can share your writing. Among other things, she's an ambassador for Wattpad, and we actually cover enough ground in this episode that I'm going to split it into 2 episodes. The other reason I'm going to do that is because she actually produced one of the best show and tells in this show so far. So if you don't know, there is a YouTube version of this show, and so you can watch the video recording of our conversation if you're interested. And often guests will produce stuff, to share, like visually, and it might be a book cover, it might be something cool in their office or on their desk, and she actually produced a person. So she co-writes her Atompunk series with her husband, Max, AKA Steven, and we get into enough of a conversation at the end when I thought the interview was wrapping up that we have more content for a discussion with Max. And so if you're interested in collaboration, maybe even with a significant other, and how this couple has made it work, then I think you'll find that really, really interesting. I know I did. And so this is going to be part 1. And in this episode, we'll talk about Decopunk and Dieselpunk. And then in the next episode, we will talk more about steampunk and Atompunk and some other collaborative opportunities, including working with Max, her husband. So this will be a 2-parter for that reason, and I'm so excited to jump into part 1. But first, let me just share what I've been doing, what I've been up to. As you probably are well aware, I have gone through surgery, and it was on my knee, and the recovery has begun. So it was tough just even getting to this point. I was really confused by the options that were on the table because there were some surgeries I needed to look into that were really new and didn't have a lot of track record. And that really felt unnerving to me. So it was tough to make those decisions. And then I was also slammed with some other life events, because these things come in like 3s or 4s. Have you noticed? These life-changing stresses. And so, then I had to move in that same window and had lots of people to help me. But basically, I'm in a wheelchair, or actually I'm transitioning to crutches now, but I've been in a wheelchair. And so to try to unpack once all the helpers go and it's just me and my wheelchair, it's been a challenge. And it's actually helped me get stronger, literally. Like my arms are so strong right now. So that's super cool. And that's just my 2 cents from what I've been going through. Thanks for listening. And then also, the other thing I'll say is when I was lying around, there was lying around time for sure. It was just so painful, and I had to be hooked up to this crazy ice machine that was really cool, actually, kind of cyborg-ish, because you like hook yourself into the ice and then you unhook yourself to like go do your business in the bathroom, whatever. But it was actually really cool, but kind of cryogenically awesome. And then I know it's not true cryogenics, I know. So basically I was laying around during that period, also having some trouble with medication. So I wasn't all there for sure. But in that state, I was able to actually take my simple hand recorder and use one of my favorite productivity tricks, and that is dictation. So I am just a total nerd about dictation. And the cool thing that I observed was that, and I've observed this before, but this was like on another level. So I observed that even though I felt like I wasn't really saying that much, and I even felt like I wasn't even talking that long, but honestly, I listened back later and some of that stuff is really good. some of that stuff is super, like, literally stream of consciousness and kind of weird, but some of it was really good and stuff I can use, and quite a lot of content. So if you're new to dictation or haven't checked it out, the whole thing is just basically that you can go faster because you can speak faster than you write or type generally. But it's different for everyone. Some people just really don't take to it. In my opinion, just because dictation was so hard for me to learn, I think it can be a matter of connecting with the right way to learn it. And so I do share how I learned it because it was hard for me. It did take me effort and time. And so I know how to break that down and help people persevere. I have written a book about it. I wrote it 3 years ago, I want to say. And so you can find that on Amazon, or you can go to theproductiveauthor.com, but it's called The Productive Author's Guide to Dictation. And so as I was laying there and in this funk, I actually came up with some really cool ideas, and I was able to capture those because of dictation. So that's exactly why I completely nerd out over it. And I know I've probably already talked too long about it, but that's what I'll do because I will go there. I am a complete nerd. When it comes to dictation, I will talk about it in depth. So if you would like to check out some resources that may help you take advantage of this awesome tool, which, by the way, its real advantage to me is its health benefits. So, for example, in my recent situation, as far as using a laptop, I wasn't actually able to prop myself up because of some neck issues I have. And so with the leg where it was, all propped up, and then to try to bend my neck on a pillow to look at my screen, that was another problem. So that's an extreme case, like a medical situation. But there are also so many health benefits because you can walk around while you're dictating. You can go for a long walk while you're dictating. That's seriously what I miss the most in my situation. So it's a way to not overuse everything and to not, hurt those wrists so much with carpal tunnel and stuff. So that's why I get really into it. And if you're interested, go check it out. And there are also other resources there that could help you depending on your learning style, because it really is a game changer. So in that spirit, because of these hiccups and everything, I've been trying to route, and everything. I will not have the Salt Sheen Paradox beta reading manuscript ready for those who have signed up for a beta read until a week or two out still. But the cool thing is I actually will release my other work in progress pretty soon after that one, because I've been able to advance that one using dictation. So this is the series that's Regency era mixed with Norse mythology and some steampunk. And so that is called Peacock Levine and the Ethereal Fates of Naught. And you can check out either of these series or beta read one of them, beta read both of them. It would help me so much. And again, thank you to all the people who have signed up for the beta reading list. Sorry to extend the tease. I appreciate your understanding with that. And please go check those out at cindygrig.com, CINDYGRIGG.com, because I could really use your feedback. You are my people and you love the punk genres, and I would love to know what you think. So there's that. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into part one of this interview with Holly Gonzalez, writer of Decopunk and Dieselpunk, and just all around intelligent and insightful woman. I am so excited to share this with you. Again, it's part one of two, and here we go. At a young age, Holly began telling stories, dreaming up characters, and creating worlds. She writes speculative fiction and poetry. Her current works in progress include a Decopunk novel and a weird Western trilogy. She lives in Spokane, Washington with her husband, Steven, and a facetious tuxedo cat named Vincent. Find her at HollyGonzalez1 at WordPress.com and on Wattpad as Holly_Gonzalez. Welcome onto the show, Holly.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So in this show, as you know, we talk about the punks. So today I hope to focus on Decopunk, but wherever the conversation goes, it's all good. What is your definition of Decopunk and what does it offer? Why do you love it?
Oh, there's a lot of things. As most people who are into the punk genres probably know, Dieselpunk and Decopunk are pretty closely related. Some people consider them the same thing. When I first got into the punks, actually, I started with Dieselpunk, and it's great. It's got a lot of military, a lot of a little more maybe gritty feel to it. I always enjoyed the more glamorous side of those early centuries of the 1900s to early World War I up till like early 50s. My grandparents raised me on the music of that time, the old movies, a lot of the fashions I've just always loved. And so that drew me. And then I discovered that there actually was something called Decopunk. And, it was defined by someone as being the shinier, more glamorous side of Diesel. And I started looking more into it and realized it wasn't really much all that different from Dieselpunk at all. My goal then was I liked the concept, but I wanted to literally make it something of its own. For me, something that's Decopunk needs to actually have Art Deco in it in some fashion. Whether it's the architecture, the music, the fashion. I think that's the big definer for me. And I have found a few other writers, artists, and such that are doing that. But just your typical film noir classic, something set in the 20s. To me, that's still Dieselpunk. But I just love it. Decopunk is, to me, it represents an extreme optimism that began in the early 20th century when everything was possible. Anyone could do anything. Coming out of World War I, which was terrible, and up till into the 20s is when everything started to become progressive. And I just love that optimism. The idea that science perhaps could be the liberator of humanity rather than, than its downfall. A little more of an optimistic side. Of course, Decopunk could possibly include more dark areas, and I have found a few of those in my own work as I started in 2014 writing what I termed a Decopunk novel, which is, kind of evolved into its own thing, but it still does have that core. There, so that's been interesting. It's been like a journey for me to try and kind of discover what it is for myself.
Well, I think a lot of us come through it that way where we like certain aesthetics. We like thinking, hey, I want to combine this and this. And then we come across this term Decopunk, and especially those of us that are into other punks, maybe we started with steampunk or whatever. And then we come across Decopunk or some of the other punks. So that's a really familiar journey. And yet everybody's journey into it is so different. So thank you. Absolutely. I appreciate it. Now, so your definition of Decopunk, you've gone through that. You touched on Dieselpunk and also Atompunk, right?
Oh,
so
yes.
Talk a little bit about that as well.
Oh, yes. Atompunk, it's more to me, some people will include parts of the 40s. I bet you could probably include anything from, of course, the end of World War II. I included all the way into the 60s. It's got different areas, as, things progress, different aesthetics, but the overall attitude of Decopunks is still there to me. It's like there was a time when we were going to the moon, we were progressing through technology, it was going to be a better world for everyone. If you're, poor, you could still become, famous. And it was just that, once again, that optimism that continues through. The thing about Atompunk to me is that presenting atomic power, which is obviously, not exactly been the most positive, addition to Earth's technology in a positive way. It can come and go, but that's where fiction and art come in. You can imagine, what if we did have a safe and easily available form of atomic power? I think that goes back to the whole idea of retrofuturism to me, which kind of incorporates all of these punk genres, including steampunk, which is the visions that people then had for now, and also what we now can learn from, the different ideas of the past, and through art, combining it into new forms and new ideas, and hopefully envisioning a better future for ourselves in the meantime. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for that tie-in and that practical application for what it can mean for us today. And so as you got into this, what were your biggest inspirations, and what made you want to write in this area? You've already talked about the music that you grew up with. Are there any authors or any stories or movies that you connected with as well?
Oh, absolutely. Mostly movies, I would say. The first one, and one that I've loved since I was really little, was Metropolis.
So good.
Fritz Lang's Metropolis, yeah, from the, I think it was early 20s. That movie, to me, is the epitome of Decopunk. There's a few others, but Metropolis takes the cake. The story, yeah, just the settings. It was really early on. I believe it was like 1920, 1921. But it really set the vibe for, everything that came later. And I think as far as like just an aesthetic goes, that movie is Decopunk. You just don't get much more Decopunk than Metropolis.
Totally.
But,
and what they pulled off with their, limited special effects. I mean, it's really cool to watch today. It's cool.
Oh, it's fabulous. Yeah. There are a few others too. There's a movie called Madam Satan, which was later. I think it was 1930.
I have never even heard of that.
Yeah, and it was, I believe it was Cecil B. DeMille, and it's about this, it's a dated movie kind of in the plot, but the imagery and the visuals are just insane. And it's got this dirigible, this airship, where there's this like crazy costume party taking place, and everything is deco to the max.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the 20s were deco, but it really didn't hit like mainstream fashion and become overkill until the 30s, in which I love the 30s. And so this movie was just insane. And it's about this woman who has to, or she tries to seduce her husband, who she thinks is cheating on her, aboard this doomed airship. And it's,
oh my gosh, how have I never heard of this? Do you feel this all the time?
Yeah.
Just like, where has this been? I've been into this, but where has this been?
Always. Yeah, it's, I've been discovering, actually it's been a process of discovery for me as well. Just continuously finding new things. That was when I discovered into my, perusing of old films. And yeah, you want to see a Decopunk movie from the time. That's great. Writers, as far as writers, Decopunk, there is a lady, her name is Sophia Martin. And she's written an amazing book, a couple of books actually in that series. The first one is called The City Darkens. Really great book. She's an excellent writer. Another book that's just come out a couple years ago is Radiance by Catherine M. Valente.
So interesting. I mean,
amazing book.
I don't know if she would want it described as avant-garde, but that's what it struck me as. And I just loved her atypical storytelling. I loved it.
I did too. Yeah, totally off the wall, breaking the mold, which I think is really important for any punk genre.
Yeah.
But she did a great job. That was a great book. Music-wise, of course, the music from the era, there's a lot of great electro swing bands out there as well. My favorites are Caravan Palace, Alice Francis, who, interestingly enough, Alice Francis inspired one of the characters in it was kind of like a side story to the Decopunk novel for one of the characters there. She was a huge inspiration for it, and somehow she noticed it online or something like that, and I actually got a message from Alice Francis.
So cool.
Yeah, she contacted me and sent me some things, and I sent her a signed copy of the book. It was a pretty intense moment. I felt, I'm not worthy.
Well, it's just weird when the universe aligns a little bit and people kind of move closer. Like they've been out there and now I don't know. It's just interesting to feel that. And it's really cool what you've put out there. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that have read your stuff on Wattpad in particular who would be really interested, who are going to be really interested when they hear you on this interview and other things that you do. Because Holly is very active in forums and all kinds of things. So Speaking about Wattpad, though, for anyone who's not familiar with it, will you give us just a really high overview? I know you're not like a representative of Wattpad, but you've been in that world and you know why an author would benefit from it, or there's probably definitely a reason why you chose that as a platform. So can you talk about that?
Absolutely. I actually am a Wattpad ambassador now, which is
You are okay.
Yeah, basically just a volunteer. I'm an engagement ambassador. I didn't start that way. It was just about maybe 6 months ago, but it's been a lot of fun. I met mostly through Wattpad has been a social thing for me. I started it out just as another platform to put up a few stories on. I don't really put any of my serious works up there, maybe a few chapters here and there for feedback temporarily. It's mostly short stories and side stories, although I do have an ongoing serial on there that I started just for Wattpad. So it's become huge. But mostly I started there. I loved the idea of just writers and readers coming together on in a mutual, space, and there's millions of stories on Wattpad. I mean, some people think, oh, it's all teen fiction, it's all terrible fan fiction, and there is a lot of that there. It is a teen site predominantly by teens, but if you really spend time there and start talking to you find stories you like, you start talking to some of the writers there, and you'll find that there's a lot of older people on there. Most of the people I've met are older. There's a few teens, but I just don't really associate mostly with those particular sides of the fan fiction. This is not my thing, but the teens, they have to have a place to get out there and learn when they're learning to write too. So, but for me, it was started as just posting a few stories, and I started getting some comments, and from there, I started meeting people. They were really nice and just hilarious. When I got to this point, I met this group called Oorah, and they're a science fiction magazine that comes out, like an e-mag that comes out on there. And they are the most hilarious, awesome, fun people. And writers and readers both. And it just kind of went from there. One of my stories got featured, and then I became a little more well-known. I started getting a little more followers, and I enjoy it as a socializing, as well as, it's for exposure as well. As far as platforms go, Wattpad and Twitter have been my most successful. I haven't had much success on Wattpad or on Facebook. It's most of my success has been on Wattpad and Twitter. So
it makes sense. So It sounds like anybody can post on Wattpad, as long as you have an account. And then, Holly, what are the rules as far as once you post something on there? I think the rule is that you need to then offer it for free to those who read it on there into perpetuity. Is that right?
Yes, it's all free. And of course, there are different programs that you can get into. There's something called the Wattpad Stars, which they allow ads to run on your stories to generate a small revenue. I've never gotten into that. It's mostly been for me, I put something up there, just for people, just to get exposure a little, but also for people to enjoy. If it's a story that I really don't, consider something that I would really eventually like to traditionally publish. Self-publishing is always an option for something I might put up there. But, I've used the site very specifically. Some people have said Wattpad has a plagiarism risk, which to me, I think it's really anything that you post online, whether it's a blog or anything like that, it has a plagiarism risk. So, just use it wisely and, for what it is. And, you can't go wrong. I don't really post anything that I have, that's not for perma-free elsewhere, or, that I didn't just write for the site. So
it does not have to be exclusive, it sounds like.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's basically, you can post whatever you want. Most people tend to post chapter by chapter and like ongoing series. That's very popular on there, and you get people that just follow you and go along for the ride, if you will. That's how my main Decopunk story on there is right now. Although I haven't updated it in a good while, and that's terrible. I've just been so busy over the holidays. But,
no, that's good. Well, that's the perfect time for us to talk about that series and all your other work. So for anyone who hasn't jumped in yet, will you take us through that?
Absolutely. I suppose I could start with Beauty and the Bones, since that's the one we were just mentioning there. Beauty and the Bones is a technically a backstory side story series that he's definitely from the vantage point of being able to witness a lot of the very tumultuous social events that happen.
And the glitz.
Yes, exactly. And is basically the main novel, Ruby Descent. The main conflict of the plot revolves around a conflict between two brothers, Silas Blaine and Castor Blaine. Silas is the older one, but Silas is the one who is the main character of Beauty and the Bones. Castor, his younger brother, is, he's in these, but he's one of the major characters in Ruby Descent as well. And so when those two come to a head is aboard the space elevator known as the Ruby Lift is kind of when the things really get out of hand and how the characters handle it from there.
And I think I've seen a really cool series. Well, I don't know why I say I think. I've seen a really cool series on your website of some cool art for the Ruby series.
Yes, actually, I did that in February. I did a little self-challenge. I'm a visual artist as well, not a very good one, but I decided these are just going to be fun. I wanted to get some imagery out just to define some of the different characters, settings, things I've been writing about and seeing in my head that I've never really gotten around to defining. So that was fun.
So check that out. It's really cool. I enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were really fun.
And pretty cool that you are also a visual artist. So is it mostly drawing or is it other mediums as well?
Drawing and painting. Also, I do a little bit of digital art. I'm not as good with Photoshop as I'd like to be, but I can sometimes, manage to throw together a book cover here and there, things like that. So I've done a little bit of that as well.
Very cool. Well, speaking about these books, this amazing story that you've just told us about, is there a theme in there that is something that you always gravitate towards, or are you more about character versus, tell us a little bit about your writing process.
Oh, goodness. My stories are very character driven, always. They start out as an idea and then the person or the character always comes next. And it's really from that vantage point that I always try. I enjoy character-driven fiction when I read as well. But themes that I can, looking at some of my work from an objective point of view, I do have a lot of themes of transformation, redemption.
So cool.
Yeah, a lot of that. I am doing a downward spiral theme right now of how someone goes from something somewhat honorable to, corruption. That would be Beauty and the Bones. The other themes would probably be friendship, family, loyalty, those people that have your back. My main tagline for Ruby Descent's kind of been, who's got your back when everything goes down, which is, pretty much what it is, because this man can't rely on himself to solve this situation. He's got a crew behind him, but, this crew is always going at heads with each other, so it's like they have to learn to work together to, like, basically save many, many lives. So it's got that kind of a theme as well. Also, the theme of, I guess you could say, taking on the establishment, basically confronting corruption when you find it, discovering your potentials, basic universal themes, but those do tend to run through quite a few of my stories, actually, looking at them.
It's so interesting. And sometimes it's a surprise. I don't know if it's like that for you as a writer, but I know for me as a writer, it's a surprise what I see coming out in different stories. I'm pretty surprised by it. Sometimes I never would have defined that as something really on my mind even. Okay, so any last words? This has been so fun and I've absolutely loved meeting you. So
you as well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And where should people go for additional information or to check out what you're doing, since they may be, checking in at any time in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I'm really trying to make my WordPress blog the hub for pretty much everything I do. And you mentioned the link earlier. It's for anyone who didn't catch it, it's hollygonzalez1.wordpress.com. I've got links to everything up there, including Wattpad. I have a lot of stuff up on Wattpad for free reading. I have a few anthologies available to buy on my website as well that are, the writer punk ones there. And you can get links to the rest of their anthologies too through that. Goodreads is there if anyone follows me. Basically, there's a row of social links across the top, and I try to keep my blog up to date. It's also going to get a facelift this week with some more works in progress, as well as, just a few more details about some of the other things I've been involved in. So.
Thank you so much, Holly. And we will wrap it up there for part 1 of this 2-part interview. Please join us next week. And if you haven't shared this with someone and you know that they're into the punk-related genres, please do, however that's easiest for you. And if you don't know of anyone, then one cool way you can share it with others is to leave a review on iTunes and rate it with the star ratings. And that really helps. So other than that, if you are interested in the Decopunk thriller time travel adventure I mentioned at the beginning of this show, yes, you can still sign up to be a beta reader. It's a way to read for free, and it totally helps me to get your insightful feedback. You can, by the way, read as much or as little as you have time for, and it's all just super flexible, and I just appreciate whatever you can lend by way of your insight and opinion. So there's also going to be a steampunk and Norse mythology, early 19th centuries, like Jane Austen times adventure, but that's not really like a Jane Austen romance type book. It's just in that time period, and it actually gets into some of the darker elements of society. So just head to cindygrigg.com, CINDYGRIGG.com. That's what's in the hopper over here. I hope that everything's going well for you. You're finding creative ways to overcome the innate issues that pop up in life, and I will keep trying to do the same. More to come next week.